You know what the most dangerous thing in this world is. It's not failure, it's not rejection, it's not even losing everything you've worked for. The most dangerous thing is letting the world see that it affects you. Because the moment people know what breaks you, the moment they see what makes you flinch, what makes you doubt yourself, what makes you question whether you're good enough, that's when they have power over you. And I'm not here today to tell you how to avoid pain. I'm not here to tell you that nothing will ever hurt you. I'm here to tell you something far more powerful. I'm here to teach you how to act like nothing affects you, even when everything does. Let me take you back to a moment in my life that changed everything. I was 22 years old, fresh off winning Miss World, and I thought I had the world figured out. I walked into my first film meeting in Mumbai, and I remember the confidence I felt. I had just won one of the most prestigious beauty pageants in the world. Surely, I thought, they would see my potential. I sat across from this director, this big-shot filmmaker who could make or break careers with a single decision. And you know what he did? He looked me up and down, slowly, like I was a piece of furniture he was considering buying. And then he said, "Your face is too ethnic. Your accent is too American. You don't fit our idea of a Bollywood heroine. Maybe try television." I sat there, and I felt something crack inside me. Not break, crack. There's a difference. Breaking is when you let it destroy you. Cracking is when you feel the pain but refuse to shatter. I smiled at him. I actually smiled. I said, "Thank you for your time." And I walked out of that office with my head held high. And the moment I got into my car, I cried. I cried so hard that my driver asked me if I wanted to go home. But here's the thing. I didn't go home. I went to my next meeting. And the meeting after that. And the one after that. Acting like nothing affects you doesn't mean you don't feel the pain. It means you refuse to let the pain dictate your next move. It means you feel everything, the rejection, the humiliation, the doubt, and you still show up. You still try. You still believe that you're worth more than someone else's limited vision of you. I want you to think about your life right now. Think about the last time someone made you feel small. Maybe it was your boss who passed you over for that promotion. Maybe it was a family member who questioned your choices. Maybe it was a friend who betrayed your trust. Maybe it was a stranger on the internet who decided to tear you apart because they had nothing better to do. Now, I want you to think about how you reacted. Did you shrink? Did you change who you are to fit their expectations? Did you let their words replay in your mind over and over until you started to believe them? Here's what I learned: people will always have opinions. They will always have something to say about who you are, what you're doing, where you're going. And 99% of those opinions come from people who are too afraid to take the risk you're taking. They're standing on the sidelines, watching your life, judging your choices, because it's easier than building something of their own. And if you let those opinions affect you, if you let those words define you, you will never become who you're meant to be. I remember when I first came to Hollywood. Oh, you want to talk about feeling like you don't belong? Try being a brown girl from India walking into audition rooms where everyone looks like they stepped out of a magazine that never featured someone who looked like you. I remember this one audition. I won't name the project because that's not the point, but I walked in, and before I could even read my lines, the casting director said, "Can you do an Indian accent?" I said, "I can, but my character is American." "Why would she have an Indian accent?" And she said, "Because you're Indian. That's what audiences expect." I could have gotten angry. I could have argued. I could have stormed out. But I didn't. I smiled. I said, "I'll pass on this one, but thank you." And I left, because here's what I understood in that moment: their limitation was not my problem. Their narrow understanding of who I could be was not something I needed to internalize. I knew who I was. I knew what I was capable of. And I was not going to shrink myself to fit into their small boxes just to make them comfortable. Acting like nothing affects you is a form of self-preservation. It's armor, not the kind that makes you hard and cold and unreachable, but the kind that protects your spirit, your dreams, your sense of self-worth. It's the difference between being vulnerable and being a victim. Vulnerable people feel deeply, but don't let those feelings paralyze them. Victims let every slight, every setback, every criticism become evidence that they're not good enough. Let me tell you about my father. He was in the military, and growing up in a military family taught me something invaluable. You can't control what happens to you, but you can always control how you respond. My father used to say, Priyanka, life will knock you down, that's guaranteed. But whether you stay down, that's up to you. I watched him face transfers, difficult assignments, separations from family, and he never complained. Not once. He would come home after the hardest days, and he would still find a reason to smile, still find a way to make us laugh. When he got sick, when we found out he had cancer, I saw that same strength in him. He didn't let the disease define his last years. He didn't become bitter or angry. He lived, fully, completely. Even when his body was failing him, his spirit was unbreakable. And when he passed away, I made a promise to myself. I would honor his memory by living the way he taught me to live, with courage, with dignity, with the understanding that life will throw everything at you, but you don't have to catch it all. You see, most people think that acting like nothing affects you means becoming emotionless. They think it means building walls so high that nothing can get in. But that's not strength. That's fear. Real strength is feeling everything and still choosing to move forward. Real strength is crying in your car after a brutal rejection and still walking into your next meeting with confidence. Real strength is having your heart broken and still believing in love. Real strength is failing spectacularly and still having the audacity to try again. I failed so many times before I succeeded. You know what nobody tells you about success? It's built on a foundation of failure so massive that if you stacked all those failures up, they would tower over your achievements. My first few films in Bollywood flopped, critically panned. I was called wooden, expressionless, not talented enough for this industry. There were articles written about how I was just a pretty face with no substance, and every single one of those criticisms hurt. Every single one of them made me question whether I was cut out for this. But I made a decision. I decided that their opinion of me was none of my business. I decided that the only opinion that mattered was my own, and I knew deep in my core that I was capable of more. So I worked harder. I took acting classes. I studied other actors. I pushed myself beyond what I thought were my limits. And slowly, things started to change. Not because the critics stopped criticizing, they didn't, but because I stopped letting their words dictate my worth. Here's something I want you to understand. When you act like nothing affects you, you take away other people's power to control you. Think about it. If someone insults you and you react with anger or hurt, you've just given them exactly what they wanted. You've confirmed that they have the ability to get under your skin. But if you hear that same insult and you respond with calm, with confidence, with the quiet certainty that their words don't define you, suddenly they have nothing. Their weapon is useless. Their attempt to diminish you has failed. I'm not saying you should become cold or indifferent. I'm saying you should become selective about what you let in. Not everything deserves your emotional energy. Not every criticism requires your attention. Not every setback needs to become a tragedy. You have to learn to distinguish between what matters and what's just noise. When I was starting Quantico, I remember the pressure I felt. I was the first South Asian woman to headline an American network drama. Do you know how heavy that is? I wasn't just representing myself. I was representing an entire community. Every time I messed up a line, every time a scene didn't land the way I hoped, I felt the weight of those expectations. And there were people, lots of people, waiting for me to fail, waiting to say, see, we knew she couldn't do it. We knew she didn't belong here. There was this interview I did during the first season, and the journalist asked me, how do you handle the pressure of being a diversity hire? A diversity hire, as if I hadn't earned my place. As if my talent, my hard work, my years of experience didn't matter. As if the only reason I was there was to fulfill a quota. I could feel the anger rising in me. I could feel every instinct telling me to defend myself, to argue, to make her understand how insulting that question was. But I didn't. I smiled. I looked her straight in the eye and said, I'm not a diversity hire, I'm a hire. And I'm really good at my job. And we moved on because I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. I wasn't going to let her reduce everything I'd accomplished to a checkbox on someone's inclusivity list. That's what acting like nothing affects you looks like in practice. It's not about suppressing your emotions. It's about choosing which battles are worth fighting and which ones are just distractions from your real purpose. Your real purpose is not to prove yourself to every person who doubts you. Your real purpose is to become the best version of yourself, regardless of who's watching or what they think. Let me ask you something. What would you do if you knew that nothing could hurt you? Not physically, but emotionally. What risks would you take? What dreams would you chase? What would you say yes to that you're currently saying no to because you're afraid of what might happen? Most people never reach their potential because they're terrified of how failure might feel. They're terrified of embarrassment, of judgment, of looking foolish. So they play it safe. They stay in jobs they hate because at least it's secure. They stay in relationships that don't fulfill them because at least they're not alone. They keep their dreams locked away in some hidden part of themselves because at least no one can tell them those dreams are stupid. But here's the truth. You're going to feel pain regardless. You're going to experience disappointment whether you take risks or not. The question is, do you want to feel the pain of trying and failing, or the pain of never trying at all? Because I can tell you from experience, the second pain is far worse. The pain of regret, of wondering what if, of knowing you had something in you that you never let out. That pain doesn't fade. It grows. It compounds. It becomes this heavy thing you carry with you. And 20 years down the line, you'll look back and think, why didn't I just go for it? What was I so afraid of? I've met so many people who are living half-lives because they're terrified of what other people think. They're performing for an audience that doesn't even care about them. They're making decisions based on what their parents want, what society expects, what will make them look good on social media. And in the process, they've lost touch with who they actually are and what they actually want. When I decided to write my memoir, people warned me. They said, don't be too honest. Don't share too much. People will use it against you. And I thought about it. I really did, because there were parts of my story that were painful, parts that showed my vulnerabilities, my mistakes, my struggles. But then I realized if I'm not honest about who I am, if I keep performing this perfect version of myself, I'm just as trapped as everyone else. I'm just as affected by what people think as the person who's too scared to try anything at all. So I wrote the truth. I wrote about my insecurities, my failures, my moments of doubt. And you know what happened? Some people criticized me. Some people said I was oversharing, that I was seeking attention, that I should have kept some things private. And their criticism didn't touch me. Not because I'm superhuman, but because I had made peace with my decision. I knew why I wrote what I wrote. I knew that my honesty might help someone who was struggling with the same things. And that purpose was stronger than any critic's opinion. That's the key. When you have a clear sense of purpose, when you know your why, external criticism loses its power. You're not performing for approval anymore. You're not seeking validation. You're pursuing something that matters to you, and whether people applaud or criticize becomes secondary. I want to tell you about a young girl I met at an event a few years ago. She must have been about 16, and she waited in line for over an hour to talk to me for 2 minutes. When she finally reached me, she started crying. She said, I want to be an actress, but my parents want me to be a doctor. Everyone tells me I'm being foolish, that I'm throwing my life away. I don't know what to do. I looked at this girl, and I saw myself at that age. I saw the fear, the uncertainty, the desperate need for someone to tell her that her dreams were valid. I said to her, can I ask you something? If you become a doctor to make everyone else happy, and you spend the next 40 years of your life doing something that doesn't fulfill you, whose life are you really living? She stared at me. But what if I fail? She asked, and I said, then you fail. But at least you'll fail at something you chose. At least you'll know you tried. And here's the thing about failure. It's not permanent unless you decide it is. failure is just information. It tells you what doesn't work so you can figure out what does. I don't know if she became an actress. I don't know if she followed her dreams or chose the safer path, but I hope I gave her permission to at least consider what she wanted, not just what everyone else wanted for her. Because that's what acting like nothing affects you really means. It means trusting yourself more than you trust other people's opinions. It means understanding that your life is yours to live, and the only person you'll answer to at the end of it is yourself. Every single person in this room, every single person listening to my voice right now has something they're holding back. Some dream they're not pursuing, some truth they're not speaking, some version of themselves they're not allowing to exist because they're afraid. Afraid of judgment, afraid of failure, afraid of what people will say. And I'm here to tell you that fear is a liar. Fear will tell you that you're not ready, that you're not good enough, that you should wait until conditions are perfect. And if you listen to that fear, you will wait forever, because conditions are never perfect. You're never going to feel 100% ready. There's never going to be a moment where everything aligns and the universe gives you a clear sign that it's time to go. You know when it's time right now. It's always been time. The only thing standing between you and the life you want is your willingness to stop caring so much about what might go wrong and start focusing on what might go right. I think about all the times I was told no, all the times I was rejected, overlooked, underestimated. If I had let those moments define me, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have built a career that spans 2 continents. I wouldn't have started businesses. I wouldn't have written a book. I wouldn't have used my platform to advocate for causes I